G'day friends and foes, welcome to RJ's This Is Not Legal Advice episode 3. So unfortunately there have been a number of technical issues with creating this video for various different reasons. It seems the gremlins at it. This includes the first half of the video disappearing, and with the references section that I have at the end having some issues with that, with recording the audio, so I'm going to have to redo that part, and that also contains a number of corrections from this video, that kind of thing. This video is about Jodie Harrison, who was a former mayor of Lake Macquarie City Council. She was also, and still is, and is running for election, the state member for Charlestown, and some other people ancillary to that. So these are all allegations only. They're not proved in a court of law. They should be investigated. We do have innocent until proven guilty. We also have circumstantial evidence as well of these claims. Sorry, I'm running out of voice. I just did a long section for the referrals and then it turned out it buggered up. So sorry about that. And then I was sitting in a very hot car in this video, but I'll have to just redo another little introduction because otherwise it, kicks in halfway through the video. So this opinion and allegations and claims of instances that I believe should be investigated, as I said, relates to Jodie Harrison. Going back in time, I knew Jodie Harrison for a number of years because I had some involvement with Lake Macquarie City Council in a couple of ways. I'll just keep it at that. And anyway, so Jodie Harrison was initially very friendly, amiable, that kind of thing, when I knew her when she was a mere councillor. Then what happened for the 2012 Lake Macquarie City Council elections, I decided to run for mayor as well as councillor for one of the wards. So in Lake Macquarie City there are 3 wards, and each ward has 4 councillors, plus you have another councillor who is a mayor that represents a whole city. So anyway, the New South Wales Electoral Commission had a information night at the chambers at Lake Macquarie City Council, and in that presentation they included things like what a councillor does, what a mayor does, what powers they have, about fundraising, like donation related issues, demographics of Lake Macquarie City, that kind of thing. And at the end of the presentation, Jodie Harrison walked up to me and she had what I would describe as a sort of disappointed, as well as, what would the word be? She had a lot of disappointment in her voice, but then also frustration, I guess you'd say. And she said to me something like, "Oh, RJ, why didn't you tell me you were going to run for councillor? Oh, you could have been on the Labor ticket. Oh, it's too late now, though. We just picked, I think, the 4th person on the ticket, blah, blah, blah." And anyway, so then at a meeting that I used to regularly attend with Jodie Harrison, she was a board member, I was a board member, community representative. Then the next time I went to that meeting, she started pummeling me for information, including about what resources I have, what logistics I have for the election, how many people I'm going to have help me, blah, 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 which of course I didn't answer. but then things had changed from then. Then you can see in TINLA episode 2 on Jodie Harrison's electoral campaign for the Charlestown by-election in 2014 what her team did to my family, and you can just click my other videos and look for it, or just type TINLA 2 Jodie Harrison Michael Daley something like that into the YouTube search bar. But then I think it must have been for the 2015 Charlestown election, because there were two different, what do you call that? There's a plaza across from Charlestown Square along Charlestown Road, and they had, for the by-election and then for the actual general election, two different locations within that plaza where the New South Wales Electoral Commission had their area headquarters, if you want to call it that. So the divisional returning office, technically. Anyway, so at one of those, we had the... Oh, I think I actually cover this in a video already. But I'll just cut to the video then, because I think it does because I think it does cover that, about the end of the candidates lotto to work out who's on the ballot paper. Anyway, so I'll just stop this here now. Thank you. Please like, share, subscribe, and watch the rest of this video and the follow-up one. In 2014, Andrew Cornwall and Tim Owen in Newcastle were kicked out of Parliament. They had accepted prohibited donations, and there was a by-election, even though the election was planned for 2015 anyway, for the general election. Anyway, so when you go into an election for New South Wales Parliament, they don't have a thing called the Robson rotation that I'll explain in a different video later on, perhaps. But candidates have a lotto, a ballot, to determine which order they are on the ballot paper. So it's advantageous to be first or last, because there's the so-called donkey vote or reverse donkey vote. And again, I'll explain that in a different video later. But anyway, at the end of the ballot, Jodie Harrison waited until most of the other candidates, I think they all had left the room, at Charlestown, the little, what's that called? There's like a little plaza across from Charlestown Square along Charlestown Road. And anyway, so she waited until the end of this little lotto and waited for the other candidates to leave and the media. And I was chasing my little, she would have been two and a half, something like that, a year old at the time. And I managed to get her. So Jodie Harrison went up to me and said that she was getting lawyers to look into suing me over my electoral flyer, which pointed out, some electoral promises that Labor had that they didn't fulfill, such as the Cameron Park roundabout, that the previous Labor government claimed that they bought a dredge for Lake Macquarie, which they in fact didn't do, some things like that. And anyway, then she decided to be quiet when I asked her, was she paying for her own lawyer or using the public resources of Lake Macquarie City Council, which apparently she was, which is prohibited. You can't use that for personal reasons when you're a councillor or mayor. Anyway, so that was one interesting part. I'll get on to another in a second. Very hot in this car. Oh, I'm sweating. Quick dab. My next point is that Jodie Harrison knowingly, or ought to have known, even though it's clear from circumstantial evidence, in my opinion, that she did knowingly accept prohibited donations herself, and that is after Labor's campaign about prohibited donations with Jeff McCloy, with Tim Owen and Andrew Cornwell. So Jodie Harrison accepted donations from the Drayton family, who are prohibited for one being property developers, and for two being in the alcohol related industry. So the law at the time, and presumably still the law, is that if anyone has a business or is a close associate of someone with a business in tobacco, alcohol, or property development, then those people are prohibited from making donations to New South Wales, like the actual state parliament, and also council candidates, even though it's a silly law in that the big parties can merely accept donations to their federal offices that then just get sent back down to their candidates, like Jodie Harrison. But she directly accepted donations from the Drayton family. There's Andrew Drayton and his father's Peter Drayton. You've got the Drayton wines, for instance. They've also got a beer, what would you call that? Forget the name of the beer place. I think it's maybe called Ironwood or something like that. And even on Jodie Harrison's list of donations that you can find on the internet, it has a donation. It claims only for $35 value of wine donated for a raffle. I suspect that there was a lot more than one bottle of wine, and if it was only worth $35, that would be the wholesale value. Someone else approached me who claimed to have information and proof that Jodie Harrison had accepted vastly higher donations from another group of prohibited donors, and that is in relation to venue hire, that kind of thing, catering, something like that. That other person was going to go forward with that information if ICAC took my information seriously. I provided that to ICAC, that's the Independent Commission Against Corruption. Unfortunately, at the time, from memory, it might have been just after, what was her name, Margaret Cuneen, from memory, basically sort of shut ICAC down a little bit. She was going to be investigated by them, and I think from memory she brought up that star chambers had been forever banned under one of the habeas corpus acts, and that ICAC is a star chamber, therefore they have no right to investigate her. And from memory, I think she might have been an ICAC prosecutor before she got in trouble. The story went something like, or she didn't get in trouble eventually, as far as I know, but the story went something like her son or her daughter was in a car and pulled over by the police, and she allegedly told them to feign having a heart attack or something like that so they wouldn't be breath tested or some issue like that. Anyway, so she shut down a lot of ICAC, and ICAC found out that their powers weren't as extensive as they believed beforehand or something like that. ICAC, the information, the letter they provided, I should say, is classified as sensitive information. So I'm not sure if I can share the correspondence, but it went something like, we appreciate the information you have provided. Thank you very much for that. It might well be corruption and the acceptance of prohibited donations, but ICAC has to triage the cases, something like that. So we are declining to investigate at this stage. So I may as well just use names. This information was provided to the Newcastle Herald. I had 2 contacts at the newspaper, and I think I might also have spoken to another. I won't bother naming them, but I got put in contact with 2 journalists, and I can get their names later if I just do a little voiceover or do TINLA episode 3.5 because I'm actually due somewhere in half an hour, so I probably don't have time to look this up. But one of the journalists was, from memory, named Pam, and she either then or now works for Greg Piper, a state MP for Lake Macquarie, and then the other one was Michael, perhaps that name's not correct. Like I said, I can provide this information later. Anyway, so they took my information, and then for another disturbing thing, after they took my information, they said that they would have to obviously contact Jodie Harrison, let her have her right of reply, that kind of thing. The Mail journalist put on Twitter some days later, because they kept refusing to answer my phone calls, to say, normally expect the thing to be dealt with and in the newspapers within, say, a week or something like that. And then Mail journalist put on Twitter something like, haha, here is a new business idea. You contact someone that you have all this breaking information about them, and then they offer to buy more ads for their party, and then the story goes away, or something like that. Again, I can try and find a screenshot of the actual post. But anyway, from then, which for one is circumstantial evidence of corruption at Newcastle Herald, and or at least the particular journalists that I spoke to, and also circumstantial evidence of bribery by Labor / Jodie Harrison, something like that, which are massive claims, massive allegations, but that's what I believe the case is, and it should be investigated, including by ICAC for this blackmail, or not blackmail, bribery and corruption allegations, if ICAC has that power to do that anymore. I don't know. But anyway, it's very disturbing. And then magically the story just disappeared. And anyway, so I'm going to have to go now, so I'll probably upload this video and then do another one later, and see what happens from there. And it's my opinion, my allegations, it's all alleged at this point in time, but you have just using Charlestown as an example, Andrew Cornwell was a very nice fellow. Apparently only met him a couple of times, and only sort of publicly or whatever. He did a lot for Charlestown, including getting a lot of funding that wouldn't otherwise have gone to Charlestown for, just one example, the Hillsborough Road, Crockett Street, little turn off there, just as one example. A problem is when you have very safe Labor or Liberal seats, then basically the parties can neglect those seats because they know they're going to get your votes anyway. That's, it's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of a lot of people, and logically it holds true. I'll just wait for the car to go past. Anyway, so I'll very quickly try and find some extra information, but I've literally got to go in, say, about 3 minutes, and then maybe start this video rendering, so hopefully it's up this afternoon. Thank you for your time. There was a problem when I recorded this reference section, so I'll have to try and recreate the commentary that I used to make any corrections, that kind of thing. So it was either the 2014 or 2015 Charlestown elections, because there were two different ones. It was when the New South Wales Electoral Commission occupied the room that's been circled now, as opposed to there, which they occupied for the other election. So either the middle part of the building, somewhere around there, but the one that I'm talking about with Jodie Harrison was when it was in that top left-hand corner. What I talked about with this section is the Lake Macquarie Young Citizen of the Year award for 2013, and I was a recipient of an award then. This also indicates other potential corruption. So the committee, or at least the people that I spoke to for this award, were Labor's Barney Langford and Chad Griffith. Chad liked insulting me on Twitter and getting his mate, the so-called Hyper Brendan, to as well, which you can see a couple of little screenshots in the TINLA episode 2 video on Jodie Harrison and Michael Daley for Jodie Harrison's by-election campaign, where they were bullying her team, was bullying my wife, and our little 2-year-old was with her. So you can either call that bullying a 2-year-old as well, or bullying her mother in front of her. So with this, the Lake Macquarie committee or whatever for the Citizen of the Year award informed the Newcastle Herald that myself, as you see, RJ Martin and Andrina Cardamus jointly won Citizen of the Year. Then on the night in question, they had printed books or booklets, and the booklets claimed incorrect information about myself, making out that I was a part of the organisation, that Andrina was basically like the young mayor of Lake Macquarie, as commonly, parliaments have youth parliaments. Lake Macquarie City Council had a youth council, which I was not a part of. But then on the booklets it made out that, I was Andrina's hanger-onger, however you want to pronounce that. And I believe that I was the only person elected on time for the Young Citizen of the Year, and that I therefore should have won the award by default. I ended up being provided with a runner-up award medallion presented by Jodie Harrison. But the point is that I have reason to believe, and I won't get into that reasoning at the moment, but, if this ever gets investigated by law enforcement, then, so be it. But I believe that I was the only one nominated on time, therefore I should have won the award. Now, with the 2012 election, which my nomination related to, basically there were two main issues that I can think of off the top of my head. One was a massive rate rise for residential and business properties in Lake Macquarie City Council. That is over and above the rate peg. I was in favour of the rate peg figure, which might have been, say, 3% per year, something like that. The massive rate rise from memory was something like 70 and 90% rate rise over 5 or 7 years. It's not that critical to get that information correct at the moment in this particular video. The other issue was about Lake Macquarie City Council ultra-viriously going outside of their scope by basically conducting sea level rise studies, that kind of thing. There were claims that the level of Lake Macquarie would rise something like 2.7 metres during a king tide, blah, 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 which under section, from memory, 80 of the Constitution, Commonwealth Constitution, water is a state-based power, nothing to do with councils, even though councils legally can only be departments of state government, but it's still not within their scope. And that's because there were 2 failed referenda on providing constitutional recognition in one form or another to local governments, or councils as they're properly called. So it's also, could have been seen as embarrassing for Lake Macquarie City Council to be providing me with Young Citizen of the Year when I was against the council's massive rate rise. So in order to increase rates by more than the rate peg in New South Wales, they have to get approval by IPART, which is the independent panel for doing that. Just click on the little news article, but it's behind a paywall. But within that article, it claims that myself and Andrina jointly received Young Citizen of the Year, but during the award ceremony, it turned out that I had received runner-up, and that's for Labor Council, Labor councillors picking who received that award. So just go back. This next part's interesting. With the nomination eligibility criteria for Young Citizen of the Year for Lake Macquarie City Council, they now have, which I don't think they had before, but obviously it's probably based on me, that political candidates cannot even be nominated for the award, which there's been great people that have received awards for great deeds, and I've encouraged them to run in elections. So why should they be prevented from receiving an award for being a political candidate? Whether that's someone, doing a hay run or, a lot of other great deeds. Fair enough that elected representatives can't get the award, I guess, or at least ones that on the council because, conflict of interest, that kind of thing. And also, in a way, people could say it's not in the spirit of the award, but political candidates, and it also doesn't define, does that mean people that have been political candidates in the past or that they're currently running for election, that kind of thing. Why should they be deprived of the ability to receive a Young Citizen of the Year medallion or certificate or whatnot? This next part's going to be very hard to read, but because I have to do it from the preview window, but as you can see, I sent this email to Amy Delore of fairfaxmedia.com.au and Michael McGowan. So that's basically Newcastle Herald. It was done on the 20th of June 2016, and it reads, "No idea what the ramifications are of the disclaimer at the bottom," that is where the letter says sensitive, "nor am I responsible for it. My address is legally protected, yet is on the ICAC letter. Please do not reveal it. I was supposed to have moved to Cessnock a couple of months ago, again with a legally suppressed address, yet I am having NCAT issues to deal with as the house I rent is an illegal dwelling, etc." So I'll scroll down in a second and you'll see that Amy Delore apparently didn't receive this email. I'm not sure if I resent it with Amy de.lore if that ended up going through, but Michael McGowan was the main person that I was speaking to or corresponding at least with the email. I did do phone calls, etc. as well. So as you can see down the bottom, it says postmaster blah blah blah, delivery has failed these recipients or distribution lists. So please remember that date, the 20th of June 2016. So this is Michael McGowan. He's now working at the Guardian newspaper, the English newspaper, but the Australian correspondent, I suppose. So this is from the 26th of, no, sorry, I think it's the 28th. It's a bit hard to read in this preview screen, but I'm pretty sure it was the 28th of June. And it says, this is from Michael McGowan, just 8 days after I posted that information. And it says, idea for print media business model, call up story subjects, explain the shocking corruption yarn you're going to write about them. Then, instead of writing the yarn, offer to let them buy ad space where the story would have appeared. Perfect. So I wrote back, wouldn't that be corruption in itself? Sounds like bribery. And he wrote, yeah, but who's going to admit they're being bribed when the implication is that they're corrupt? It's a perfect system. Then he corrected there, as in they are, as opposed to here, there, everywhere. So technically, rereading it, it's more, sounds like blackmail from Michael McGowan / the Newcastle Herald. His behaviour doesn't necessarily reflect the Newcastle Herald's, of course, and not the current Newcastle Herald, that kind of thing, I should say. Otherwise, I'll probably never, put another article in a newspaper about me again, or even about this video. And, Michael McGowan might well have been kicked out of the Newcastle Herald, who knows. But the point is that, this is basically evidence of corruption. After this, the story didn't appear, and it was around the federal election, and I'm sure Labor just had more ads in the paper in lieu of the story, as it suggests within these tweets. So enough circumstantial evidence adds up to being proper evidence that can be admitted to court, and it proves the theory of a case, of a prosecutor's case. But, let's see if this even goes to court. Who knows? But perhaps in the video I should have said blackmail rather than bribery, or maybe not. Maybe you can call bribery and blackmail very similar things. They might have similar elements of crimes without looking them up, but just being from, different perspectives. So this is some of Michael McGowan's little stories in The Guardian. We've got a lot about Pauline Hanson. There's Cardinal Pell, Alan Jones. That's interesting. Alan Jones donated to the One Nation Party. This is Amy Delore. So she's with the Hunter Business Chamber / New South Wales Business Chamber now, apparently. There she is again on LinkedIn. So as you'll see, she was a senior journalist at the Newcastle Herald. And before the story was sent to her and to Michael, which she might not have received it, she was a research / media / policy advisor of Greg Piper, independent MP for Lake Macquarie. So really, state MPs used to be called MLA or MLAs, and I just got to pause this for a second. So state members of parliament used to be called members of the Legislative Assembly, that's MLA, as opposed to MP, member of parliament. But I guess somewhere along the line they thought more highly of themselves, so they took on the federal designation for MP. Just like magistrates are properly your worship rather than your honour, but somewhere along the line magistrates started seeing themselves apparently as being fully qualified judges. Anyway, so this was sent to a radio station person, and they were waiting for the story to break in the newspapers, but have, information pre-prepared, because the newspapers obviously have a lot bigger legal team, more resources, more funding, that kind of thing. So I'll just quickly read through this. Hopefully it's not too hard to read on this preview screen. Please find attached documents relating to potentially knowingly receiving prohibited donations by Jodie Harrison, who had choice words to say about the alleged corruption of others for receiving such donations. This was referred to ICAC in a funding disclosure section of the New South Wales Electoral Commission. ICAC also referred it to the New South Wales Electoral Commission. They state in their letter. I guess that I should redact my new address since I don't like my cars being vandalised, full garbage bins stolen, photographs taken of me and my family, etc., all of which has happened to me previously. I'll keep it there for completeness sake. You can black it over though. ICAC basically said that the donation, which they concede might well be a knowingly received prohibited donation, which a High Court upheld the idea of prohibited donations from those three classifications of prohibited donors in the McCloy case. But the provable value, without witnesses and what Jodie Harrison's team states, is not worth their time, as they have bigger fish to fry. If there are located photos from the event, and there are more than the slated value of prohibited donations being raffled, so, more than one bottle of wine or more expensive wine, then that hypothetically leads to jail time for fraud, etc. I don't have access to such footage/photos from the night, as I don't have friendlies that I know that went there. ICAC could have compelled such information to come forward, however. If Bazza, as in Barry O'Farrell, who was a New South Wales Premier, who was made to retire over a bottle of wine, albeit a very expensive one, Hermitage Grange, I think, from the year he was born. But if Bazza was compelled to retire due to a bottle of wine and 10 libs, as in Liberals, state members for donations from property developers, then shouldn't the same happen to someone who, I believe, knowingly accepted at least one prohibited donation from two of the three categories of prohibited donors in one? Alcohol and property developer categories. Who knows, they might well be involved with tobacco too, the other category. I'd like to be anonymous at this stage for reducing possible violent consequences to myself/family. I might well come out at a later stage after the dust settles. I hope that if you deem it worthwhile, that it helps your career for breaking a story. I guess that you probably won't have time to read this and process it while you're on air. Cheers, RJ. So as you can see here, in 2015 on the 30th of November, I also sent this to people including Mike Baird, who was the Premier at the time, Paul Toole, who was the local government minister, and some other members of Parliament. There's even a couple of federal ones there. And, I tried telling relevant authorities many times, and then no one seemed to care because there was no election time, or no election at the time, I should say. Then I tried again for the federal election because then, it makes it newsworthy. So I'll read through this. This refers to New South Wales potential corruption by an elected official where there are prohibited donors, whether I agree or disagree that there should not be classes of people who are banned from the political process, then what is good for the goose is good for the gander. Here is some information about prohibited donations and the Mayor of Lake Macquarie come State Member Jodie Harrison. This information was provided to the FDC team, it's a Funding Disclosure Commission or whatever, part of the New South Wales Electoral Commission, at the Electoral Commission, and also to ICAC nearly 2 months ago. The former did not reply besides the automated, "Thank you for your inquiry. We will endeavour to respond as soon as possible." ICAC informed me via letter and along the lines of that there might well be corrupt actions, yet the provable amount, what the candidate's own FDC submission shows, was deemed not worthy of their time without evidence of photographs / prize lists from the night in question, which I suspect would show much higher value, yet they apparently declined to worry about it or to request such information from those mentioned. Letter to me from ICAC includes, quote, what you allege... Just wait, it's scrolling around there. So, what you allege may amount to corrupt conduct under the ICAC Act. However, the Commission is required to focus its investigative resources on corrupt conduct that is either serious... I think here I was explaining that why I had ICAC separated and about missing emails. So looking up Andrew Drayton, I've got these emails. They include the attachments, yet they're blank in their content, who they were sent to, that kind of thing. They still have the date when they were sent, and that's even on this. It's ICAC as opposed to ICAC spelt properly, but obviously people go through your emails when you make complaints to the government and do such anomalies. So going back here, so what you allege may amount to corrupt conduct under the ICAC Act. However, the Commission is required to focus its investigative resources on corrupt conduct that is either serious or systemic or both. And the Commissioner's Assessment Panel has considered the concerns you raised. I note that while it may be correct that the donation was prohibited, I'll reread that. I note that while it may be correct that the donation was prohibited, it was a small donation which appears to be a one-off. The information available to the Commission does not indicate a reasonable likelihood that the matter involves sufficiently serious or systemic corruption or systemic corrupt conduct warranting investigative action by the Commission. For these reasons, the Commissioner will not be commencing an investigation into your concerns. Reference number E15/1624. And then I was writing to the parliamentarians that this is akin to saying being a little corrupt is okay and not serious. I'm not sure if it was missing information after that, or if it's the if on the next line. So I'm running out of voice as well. And I've already done this once today, but unfortunately the sound didn't record properly. So if a former Premier was retired over a bottle of wine, then why shouldn't a Mayor/MP? If 10 members of Parliament retired after allegedly accepting donations from prohibited donors, being developers, then why not another one based on developer and alcohol industry prohibited donors and all close associates? If a former Lord Mayor of Newcastle, Jeff McCloy, was retired over making donations, which a High Court claims is fine, i.e. to get rid of him and that the law was valid, and encouraged to have prohibited donors, again, the court allowed the government to create these prohibited donors for these particular people under proportionality rules for constitutional interpretation, blah, blah, blah. Then why does the same not apply to Jodie Harrison? This is particularly the case when Mayor Harrison, Member of Parliament, was very vocal about the alleged corruption of the above 12 people, fueling a media frenzy over the matter, etc. I believe that this is the tip of the iceberg, with other alleged incidents of a much higher value waiting to spring forth when this eventually is taken seriously, which ICAC also knew. I told them that over the phone about this other person with their allegations, that they would come forth if the thing was taken seriously, by the way. With at least one person alleging that she/he has information relating to at least one prohibited donation from a/some prohibited donors to a much higher value than that admitted, yet I believe much understated, in the funding disclosure of Ms. Harrison. It is not up to me to reveal the accuser. They will do so in their own time based on what reception I receive. See below The forwarded message for details to start your inquiries, RJ Martin. PS, I'd like to keep my name out of things as much as possible. And later on in this funding disclosure, then I might well have uncovered what the other person was telling me about in relation to catering and function room hire as donations, alleged donations and alleged prohibited donations based on hospitality slash alcohol industry related things. So now we have the rest of the letter that was forwarded to that radio personality, and it was also sent to the to the Funding Disclosure Commission, or whatever it was called, FDC, and to ICAC and to many others. And it contains evidence, and it had links with it. Some of the links now don't work. Some have moved, such as the donation declarations have moved. Now, instead of it being EFA, the Electoral Funding Authority.newsouthwales.gov.au, it's now I think election or elections.nsw.gov.au. So let's see what happens in this video where I scrolled around to. So, reading this, and this was 10th of August 2015, I believe that at least one prohibited donation was knowingly received by Jodie Harrison, State MLA for Charlestown, Councillor and Mayor of Lake Macquarie City Council, by a prohibited donor, developer and alcohol categories, maybe even another category. So maybe they have pubs or something where they sell tobacco or grow it, I don't know. But anyway, the donation, although I doubt the value, was made in the form of alcohol from the family vineyards for raffle/fundraising purposes. This is even disclosed on official declarations there. I believe this information to be true about the about the donor. Andrew Drayton is the son of a well-known developer and wine grower/merchant, Peter Drayton and Lisa Drayton. Sorry about how I'm reading this. The text is really, really tiny on this preview window, so it's buggering me up a little bit. So the Drayton family owns multiple vineyards and wine-producing companies in the Hunter Valley, New South Wales, and other areas. This includes the families of Peter Drayton, John Drayton, Greg Drayton, and whomever inherited Trevor Drayton's share. Unfortunately, Trevor died in an accident at his vineyard when part of it blew up or exploded or something like that. I think it involved cleaning products for cleaning the equipment or something like that. Anyway, Andrew Drayton is the heir to the family fortune, along with his sister Natalie, that is of Peter and Lisa Drayton. Andrew Drayton was involved with the family vineyard, previously called Ironbark Hill Vineyard, and now known as Peter Drayton Wines. Andrew Drayton was also a part of Drayton Constructions, Drayton Group. Andrew Drayton now heads Drayton Digital at the time. Drayton Digital is located at 1 Hartley Drive, Thornton. Drayton Constructions is also located at the same address. Andrew Drayton is heavily involved with the New South Wales Labor Party behind the scenes, politics, and should be aware of his status as prohibited donor, alcohol industry, prohibited donor, close associate, alcohol industry, prohibited donor, developer industry, and prohibited donor, close associate, developer industry. The close associate part is, of course, to prevent donations by proxy, e.g. if Peter Drayton donated to Andrew Drayton to donate the prohibited recipient, political candidate for New South Wales state and local government elections, Jodie Harrison. Andrew Drayton is personally known and personally knows Jodie Harrison. Mayor councillor and MLA Jodie Harrison is well aware of prohibited donor legislation and has made numerous comments and social commentary on the corrupt Labor Party, quote unquote. That might have been a paraphrase quote. Receiving prohibited donations from at least 2 prohibited donors. These people both appeared at ICAC for said donations and were Hilton Grujon, who was directly involved with Peter and Lisa Drayton with a family trust, the Grujon Family Discretionary Trust, and Peter and Lisa Drayton Family Trust, ABN 82441506710, now cancelled. Nathan Tinkler and then Mayor and Councillor of Newcastle City Council, Jeff McCloy, should say Lord Mayor. But anyway, Mr. McCloy was forced to resign from council and from his council and mayoral positions, along with Tim Owen, Liberal MLA for Newcastle, and Andrew Cornwell, Liberal MLA for Charlestown. This was due to the above and associated social commentary, including by the Labor Party, Tim Crackenthorpe, a Labor MLA for Newcastle, I think I misspelled his name there, and Jodie Harrison. The anti-prohibited donor message was the whole basis for Labor's "What did the prohibited donors get as payment for their illegally received donations?" election campaign for the series of by-elections that followed, so state seat of Newcastle, state seat of Charlestown, mayoral seat, Newcastle City Council, should be for Lord Mayor, and Ward 3 by-election Newcastle City Council, as well as for the state seat of Newcastle and Charlestown at the general state election. So Nuatali Nelms, when Jeff McCloy was booted from Newcastle City Council, she ran for mayor, was elected, or Lord Mayor, was elected Lord Mayor. That made a vacancy for the Ward 3 by-election, and that was filled by Declan Clausen, however you pronounce his name, who is now the Deputy Lord Mayor of Newcastle City Council and has been for quite some time. The donation of wine might well have been for a retail value of a lot more than the amount stated. Are there photographs of prizes for the fundraising raffle of Jodie Harrison showing the donated wine to corroborate or discredit the claimed low value of the donation? Should be low value, which is prohibited nonetheless. The prohibition on both prohibited donors and their close associates includes donations of any value. There is a complex web involving a large number of Peter and Lisa Drayton family trusts and other Drayton family trusts, which Andrew Drayton himself might well be paid directly out of, which would conclusively prove that he is a prohibited donor himself, as well as close associate and heir, not just the latter two. Peter and Lisa Drayton Family Trust, ABN 25070939532. The trustee for Peter and Lisa Drayton Family Trust and trustee for the MC and J.A. Dillon Family Trust, ABN 22787146903. The trustee for the Drayton Family Trust, ABN 21945147458. Just one of these trusts pays out over $1 million per annum, and there's a link to that information apparently, but that link no longer works. And then I will see what comes up next, because I might have read a bit quicker than I did originally when I did the actual screen capture. So as you see here, I show that the web link doesn't work anymore to that particular information. So then moving on to Margaret Cuneen, I scroll down in a second, and she was a Crown prosecutor. So ICAC investigation, this is Wikipedia. It does have references though to newspapers, as you'll see in a second. Following a serious car accident involving a girlfriend of one of her sons, it was alleged by an anonymous complainant that Cunene, her son Stephen Wiley, and his injured girlfriend Sophia Tilley attempted to influence the outcome of police inquiries into the accident by attempting to pervert the course of justice. Cunene rejected the claims against her. Cunene was accused of advising Sophia Tilley to fake chest pains to avoid a breath test after the car accident. So, based on this information, Margaret Cunene was not found guilty of anything, and therefore with the presumption of innocence, and she was innocent. And it doesn't say anything in this about if she was later disbarred or whatnot, so we can only assume that she was innocent and didn't get in trouble at all for this. So you can read through the judgment if you really like. It's Independent Commission Against Corruption against Cunene, 2015, HCA 14. It was on the 15th of April. And in a second I'll scroll down. I think there was 100 and... we'll find out. Uh, 118 paragraphs, so we won't read that, of course. So this dealt with statutory bodies investigating Independent Commission Against Corruption powers, the definition of corrupt conduct that could adversely affect exercise of official functions by public officials, whether conduct that could adversely affect efficacy, blah, blah, blah. So I did look up if it said anything about star chambers, because I suggested that in the actual video that was filmed yesterday, but I couldn't find anything about star chambers, and nor could I about habeas corpus, so apparently that wasn't involved. So this is Andrew Drayton. He's a brewer and he's into beer, politics, tech, sport and family. So IBH Brewhouse is where he brews, which is Ironbark Hill. I think I said Ironwood or something for some annoying ads popping up. Sorry about that. So we look up where he used to like insulting me. This is only a couple of things. I think he used to also refer to me as different things rather than my first name. So him writing to Carol Duncan, who's a Newcastle City Council councillor. RJ Martin, I wonder if he cracked the double figures this time. RJ having a whinge, let me guess he started it. Hashtag Charlestown votes. So this is Ironbark Hill Brewhouse that he's a brewer of, as you'll see in a second. And it was funny that Carol Duncan became involved with the ALP when a lot of people claim that she was biased in election coverage beforehand. That may or may not be an issue, allegation, blah, blah, blah. So Andrew Drayton, you see the alcohol making equipment. He was a head brewer, or is a head brewer at Ironbark Hill Brewhouse. He used to be the director of Drayton Digital, project manager and clerk at Drayton Constructions, international trade assistant at Ironbark Hill Vineyard, and also apparently he knows how to load toner into printers. Interesting. So this is his father's wine company, Peter Drayton Wines. That's Peter pulling a beer or wine or whatever it is. There's Peter Drayton again, his Twitter account. And again, he's upside down in a bubble apparently. Owner Peter Drayton Wines. So Peter Drayton Wines. used to be called Iron Hill Wines, apparently. And you see the address is 694 Hermitage Road, Colburn, New South Wales, as is the address for Ironbark Hill Brew House. You'll see down the bottom right-hand corner where Andrew Drayton works. So as you see, the father and the son are very intimately connected, even in work capacity, rather than just familial. So I don't know how much money or how much value the projects of Jeff McCloy have been, but this is to compare. So Peter Drayton as property developer, he's responsible for the $22 million development, Bunnings Warehouse at Thornton. So that's just one project alone. And he's the principal owner and managing director. So close that. So Drayton Design Construction Management. Scrolling down, back up. So as you see, they do government projects. I wonder if, the whole point of these prohibited donors for property developers was related to government contracts and you scratch my back, I scratch your back sort of thing. So he apparently does government contracts as well. So in the past 15 years, they had constructed $350 million of industrial, retail and commercial buildings. So that might well be a lot more than Jeff McCloy. So, more of a potential problem. Isn't it also peculiar that Hilton Grujon, who's related to the Drayton family, purchased a painting of Andrew Cornwell's wife for $10,000 odd as well? Maybe, I'm not saying it was, but it could have been a setup. So anyway, here's a funding disclosure piece of information from Jodie Harrison's campaign. Donation of wine for raffle prize by Andrew Drayton, as we know, is either a prohibited donor or close associate, it appears, and it claims there's one bottle worth $35, which might well have been more than one bottle, or might have been worth more than $35 retail value, who knows. We also see here, this is what I was saying about the other person mentioning about catering and venue hire donations from a prohibited donor. So Redhead Surf Lifesaving Club has apparently put on many of these Melbourne Cup luncheons for Jodie Harrison. It does have gross figure, it doesn't say net figure. So it would seem that she didn't actually pay, just say for fundraising they pay $25 a head and they collect $50 a head or something like that. It doesn't indicate on this disclosure if she actually had to pay for the venue hire or catering, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's what the other person was referring to. As you see, there's 4,000, I think it's 373, I can't really read it on this screen, in donations on the 1st of the 11th, 2017. And then later on there's one for 5,800. So if we just call it $5,000 on average per year for however many years she's done this, then some percentage of that might well be prohibited donations by the Redhead Surf Club, which I'm sure they sell alcohol and that's a lot of their business, but just in case, someone can tell me. I've never been in upstairs section of Redhead Surf Club, only the downstairs section, buying some hot chips kind of thing. So, if she's been doing it for 5 years, I don't remember how many years she's done it for. I didn't go through every single disclosure, but, that might be $25,000 worth of donations potentially. So United Voice is also another interesting one. Jodie Harrison used to work for United Voice, which was basically the alcohol and hospitality industry union, and then it got a name change. Anyway, so there's $2,000 and there's another 2,300, and I then went on a journey to try and find the correct name for the union before it got the name changed, so I can skip ahead to where I find it. So skipping ahead, you see that the union, United Voice, was formerly known as the Liquor, Hospitality and Miscellaneous Union, or the MISOs. So why I've included this is potentially they might be prohibited donors if they're collecting their money from people who work within the liquor industry, and perhaps primarily that's where their money is from. Then later on they also, took on childcare, teachers' aides, aged care, property services. Property services might well include something to do with property development, I don't know. But with just say someone is working in or a boss of a liquor facility, just say they, XYZ pub, then if they are getting money from the alcohol industry and then donating it to United Voice to then provide to the candidates, is that potentially money laundering or washing the money so that it can be donated and the source is from the alcohol related industry? Maybe, I don't know. Maybe some other people like law enforcement can try and work it out, or the Electoral Commission. So reading this is the Electoral Commission on prohibited donations or unlawful political donations. Certain political donations are unlawful if a person makes or accepts a political donation or reportable loan and is aware the donation or loan is unlawful. The person may have committed an offence and may be prosecuted by New South Wales Electoral Commission in a court. This includes individuals that accept political donations or loans on behalf of a political party, elected member, candidate, group, associated entity, or third-party campaigner. If a person accepts an unlawful political donation or loan, the value of the donation or loan, or double the value if the person knew that it was a prohibited donation, may be recovered by the New South Wales Election or Electoral Commission in a court. It does say in a court, so it should have gone to court, as a debt to the state. Really, settling out of court isn't an option based on that wording. And then, they should have the blemish next to their name. If a person makes a political donation and within 12 months a person becomes a property developer, double the amount or value of the political donation must be paid by that person to the New South Wales Electoral Commission. Political donations, loans or indirect campaign contributions are unlawful for the following reasons. And it's got a whole bunch of reasons. It's going to scroll down in a second. Sorry about that. So it's also got anonymous reportable political donations. That really should include all donations from prohibited donors, even though they're prohibited, but they should be reportable, in my opinion. Otherwise, all they do is donate $999 multiple times or just the once, and they don't need to declare it. So then I went to the category of unlawful political donations / prohibited donors. It is unlawful for a prohibited donor to make a political donation or loan, person to make a political donation or loan on behalf of a prohibited donor, person to accept a donation or loan made by a prohibited donor or a person on behalf of a prohibited donor to solicit another person to make a political donation or loan, and then I missed whatever else there was, because I'm reading slower than before. So then it's got some things that are excluded. An annual or other subscription paid to a party by an individual as a member of the party, or for the individual's affiliation with the party, unless the donation is a reportable political donation, is ridiculous, because the parties and independents can't do this because they don't have members. But a party could have, $10,000 or $100,000 membership level. So just call it, membership platinum. And then they're receiving a donation directly instead of filtering it through their federal branch. And it's all seen as ridgy-dig, which is ridiculous. So then, examples of prohibited donors. A prohibited donor is a property developer, a tobacco industry business entity, a liquor or gambling industry business entity, any industry representative organisation if the majority of its members are such prohibited donors, a close associate of a prohibited donor. So with the industry representative organisation, that might well include United Voice if they've got these rules now. I don't think it was listed like that, saying business entity, or if the majority of its members are such prohibited donors. But if most of the 130,000 members of United Voice are from, the liquor industry, hospitality industry, wherever they sell alcohol, then perhaps that is a prohibited donation, even with this very narrow view that they seem to have now, as opposed to it before saying anyone involved with property development, tobacco, alcohol, or gambling. So technically it's 3 categories covering 4 things. And then also, unions or whatever, if the majority of their members are prohibited donors. So unions also includes business chambers as well, of course. So the Liberal Party is often or usually seen to be aligned with business chambers as basically employer unions, and the Labor Party with so-called workers' unions, as they call them, affiliated unions, because not all unions are Labor related, and the unions also often support the Greens. So property developers. A property developer is an individual or corporation that carries on a business mainly concerned with the residential or commercial development of land, with the ultimate purpose of its sale or lease of the land for profit, and in the course of business, blah blah blah. So one relevant planning application has been made or is pending. 3 or more relevant planning applications have been made by or on behalf of the individual corporation and determined within the preceding 7 years, so the previous 7 years. Then you got tobacco business entities and liquor and gambling industry business entities. So, that includes things like horse racing, gaming at the casinos, or pokey machines or whatever. So, it excludes pubs, clubs, etc. that have poker machines, because they probably make most of their money from the poker machines, as an example. So it also goes on, what's a close associate? A close associate of a prohibited donor is a corporation, and it goes to the bottom saying about individuals as opposed to corporations. So a director or officer of the corporation, so Andrew Drayton is probably covered under that. I imagine, Drayton group of companies are a company. People could look it up if they really cared, but for limited liability and succession reasons, then it would be crazy if it wasn't a corporation, i.e. company, especially when they are working on hundreds of millions of dollars of projects in 15 years, $350 million worth. So it goes on about wife or spouse, including de facto partner of the individual. Really, that should be extended to children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents as well, because otherwise people can just fiddle money around, and that could be called money laundering, to make the dirty money seem like it's clean. So a close associate of a prohibited donor, that is an individual, is a spouse, including de facto partner of the individual, or in relation to the individual who's a property developer, a person in a joint venture or partnership with the property developer in connection with relevant planning, blah, blah, blah. So if people say Andrew Drayton is receiving money via the family trust, which, a whole part of the reason why people have family trusts is to minimise tax by paying their different family members from such trusts, as an example, which may or may not be the case in this one. But, it appears that Andrew Drayton is either a prohibited donor in himself or a close associate of one at least, even though it actually doesn't say children of, but it should include that as well. And before re-looking at this today, I'm not sure if it did used to say children and if they've gotten rid of that meaning. But using other law too, you can see that, properly children should be included, and in Andrew Drayton's case, he's probably a prohibited donor anyway, perhaps. As I keep saying, this hasn't been before a court, it hasn't been adjudged. These are just allegations, opinions, beliefs reasonably held, and a theory of a case, if you want to call it that. And it should be investigated by law enforcement, ICAC, the police, whomever. And please like, share, subscribe, click the notification button, feel free to donate money or connect to me on social media. My Facebook account has been taken down, I think it was yesterday for some reason, claiming there's been suspicious activity on there, whatever that means, and all that good stuff. So I'll just cover my Facebook address. Please also comment and let me know what you think of this presentation, these allegations, belief and opinion of the political candidate and current state member of Parliament, Jodie Harrison. One other important point that I forgot to mention earlier was one good thing that Jodie Harrison did after her change of opinion of me. When my wife and daughter were at pre-poll at Charlestown in a location with the little plaza that I showed before, my little girl was apparently leaning over or something. She fell backwards. Her eyes rolled in the back of her head apparently, which is really, really bad. And Janica was hysterical, and Jodie Harrison did call the ambulance, which was very kind of her, and a decent humanly thing to do. There was also a Greens party helper who happened to be a doctor, and he was an awesome, friendly person, and he also looked after Evelina. She didn't have to go to a hospital or anything, but it's wouldn't have been very pleasant to see a little girl, being your own daughter, fall backwards onto the pavement and bang her head and have her eyes roll in the back of her head. So thank you again to Jodie Harrison. I did thank her at the time because I then travelled to the polling place and said thank you to her. I even bought like a little it was like a little money box that said Jodie saw us, but I don't think she ended up getting that because I don't think I probably ever saw her again in person. But anyway, so that's my story. Please share your story in the comments, and like I said, what you think of this video, that kind of thing. Thank you very much for your time, and have a lovely day, and may we get good government for New South Wales in the election, which is on the 23rd of this month, next Saturday. So hopefully that's what happens, and should be good then. It's a pity that there's not much choice though that people have when they aren't so educated about how the electoral system works, the benefits of preference voting, that kind of thing. It's also terrible that the parties who made the law in New South Wales have made it very, very difficult, and unjustifiably so, in relation to independent candidates, that there's different rules for independents, from being required to get nominations where the political parties just have one signature from someone probably in a Sydney office, that person can therefore be a candidate in any seat in New South Wales. That's compared to in like for an independent, it used to be 30 signatures from people that live within that particular electorate, which may or may not have increased since then. I don't know, because I'm not running in this election, and I haven't been in an election for 3 years, I think. But another example is with the funding, that independents cannot claim money spent on research for their policies, whereas political parties can. So that's just, blatant discrimination and ridiculous, and the big parties appear to be making it impossible for most independents to be elected. And, there's some really good people standing as independents, really good people standing in some parties, and there's some really terrible ones as independents and in parties, but that's beside the point. It should be an even playing field, and the law should change to reflect that and be non-discriminatory. What do you think? Perhaps we should have some kind of campaign to change the law, but nothing would probably happen until maybe a month or so after the election, when the newly elected people and returning ones might actually have time to care about it and receive information and have a think about it. Thanks again. Bye.